Happy November, everybody. It's Monday, November 4th. It's the dreaded spooky part 2 episode because it's episode number 13, even though it's not Friday, November 13th. It's
You know
still
what?
number
Let's
13
let's do
episode.
this instead. Let's say this instead, Kyle. The top three goal scorers in the NHL all wear number 13. Johnny
Right.
Gaudreau obviously wore number 13, and this is episode 13. So there you go. There's your
I
there's
don't
your
have a theme for 13, if
we
that's the
don't have
case today. No.
we don't have a theme for anything. We
Yes,
just we just press record and have fun.
pretty much. That's how it goes. Hope everybody had a great weekend.
Mhm.
Yeah, it was a Halloween filled weekend for myself. That it was a lot. I woke up and it was a lot. Yeah, I don't recommend mixing drinks if you people drink out
Oh,
there, and it's not the smartest decision to
oh,
do. Yeah, that wasn't a
okay,
smart call.
okay. Well, this episode we really come to find out what Kyle does on his off days.
Whoa! Oh my god. Well, I figure it's kind of it was kind of bad timing where it happened when, you being Devils fan that you are, and then, they play Friday, and then there was that such, like, couple of days, and then, of course, they play yesterday. We'll get into
Right.
that, but, I figure that's kinda where we start. I figure we'll do a very quick recap because it already happened days ago, but, yeah, I got a text from you about halfway through the game, and you're like, "This is a snooze fest," and I looked at the score, and I said, "I'm not surprised."
Mhm,
So, yeah, I mean, ultimately, I think before, like, if we rewind, right, and go
mhm.
back to, and if pretending this is us on like Saturday, right,
Right.
I would be sitting here like, you know what? We barked at them to get their best performance out of the way on Friday night against a really good Devils team. And for the most part, I thought it was right. You said it too for your Devils, like you were expecting a fast-paced, high-octane offense that, if they get on the power play, it's going to be trouble. And all of a
Which they
sudden,
did.
nobody expected Daniel Vladar to shut the door that night, and the Flames get a 3-0 shutout win.
Yeah.
What was your biggest takeaway from Friday's game?
I think my biggest takeaway from Friday's game was Dan Vladar because I didn't think that the Flames played all that well defensively in front of him. I think that there were a lot of grade A opportunities that the Devils had, but Dan Vladar stood on his head. And you got to give him credit where credit is due. And I've said this before, with covering the Devils, that from an offensive standpoint, the only way you're going to beat the Devils, honestly,
Yeah,
is one of two things. You either have a very structured defensive system, like the LA Kings. I use the Kings as a good example because the way that their system is normally is very good in
mhm,
terms of that defensive structure, or you have a goaltender who just has a really, really great game that night and has his best performance. And that was one of the best performances I've seen from Dan Vladard in a while. He was really, really locked in from the opening puck drop. Not to say Jacob Markstrom wasn't, because I think a lot of people look at Markstrom's performance and say, "Oh, it was 3-0." Well, yeah, he gave up two goals in the span of, I think it was like 15 seconds.
and the
Um,
goals weren't even that
and the goals
quality.
weren't even that bad. No, it was, from a Devils perspective, you don't look at it and say Jacob Markstrom was the reason that we lost. You look at it and say one defensive breakdown, which was the 2-on-1 that eventually made it 2-0. I think that was a Jonathan Huberdeau goal.
I think so.
And then you just simply ran into a goaltender on a big night. Like that's simply it. It wasn't a matter of the Devils didn't play well. From again, looking at it from the Devils, I thought defensively it was one of their best games. I thought they did a really good job of not giving the Flames much. The Flames didn't really do much of anything. And I even tweeted it out saying that the only way either team is scoring tonight, we are bounce. And
Yeah,
sure enough, throw the puck on net. Blake Coleman's coming from his left to his right, and he deflects it as he should, but he deflects it to his skate, and it goes off the skate through the legs of Markstrom and in. Markstrom's not in bad position to make the save. It just happened to go through him, and I think it was one of those things where then it just kind of snowballed from there. Then the Devils are in more of a panic mode where, okay, now they got to get the next goal because now they're down, give up a 2-on-1, and the Flames take advantage of it. Boom, at an empty net goal. Um, Also, Lomberg with the left hook of all left hooks I've ever seen on Nate Bastian. I think threw a couple of really good punches. Now, with Nate Bastian being out the next couple of weeks with a broken jaw, thanks to Lomberg's left hand.
That was pretty cool, though. Not gonna
No,
lie.
I mean it was cool. It was cool, and I think
Oh, he
that
just beat his brakes off. I don't even think
yeah, he
it was.
just
It
be-
was
and
funny after the game. It was funny because Lumber goes on after the game. He goes tarps off for the interview. Right? Hilarious. The guy's
he's in
ripped.
nothing but underwear.
Amazing.
He comes in backwards hat, underwear, and I don't know who's the host of their post game show.
Sean Parker.
You could see like in his face reaction, he's like,
He's like,
"All
what
right,
a,
let's just get through this."
it's like what a menace.
Like why?
But he
But
looks like Tarzan 2.0.
oh, 100%.
Right? I thought like so. It was funny because he said in that, and he was like, I think he wanted to fight." And he
Well,
still just goes.
here was the confusion. I say this, here's the confusion of the whole situation. So Paul Cotter gets, I forgot who hit him originally, but he's falling down. He's in the process of falling down. Longberg comes in 100 miles per hour. First of all, misses Paul Cotter.
I think it was
Number one.
late. It was a
Yeah,
late.
he hit him late, but like he didn't hit him because
Yeah,
like
he hit
Cotter
the
was
ball.
basically preparing to get like his head smashed into the wall.
Yeah,
Bastion took exception to the fact that Longberg came in late. That was what started. And I think Longberg got confused because there wasn't this.
yeah. He got confused and then started beating
He
the
got
brakes
confused, and
off
then
of
Longberg's like, all
Bastion.
right, I guess we're doing this. And then Bastion gets caught up, and Bastion's not prepared. I don't think
No,
Bastion was prepared.
I don't even think he knew. He's like,
I
"What's
don't think he
happening
wanted to
here?"
fight. I think he just wanted to hit him. I think honestly, like like the pushing and shoving after a
Yeah,
hit, like that.
yeah.
And Longberg just like took him to the cleaners. Honestly, just took him to the cleaners, and now Bastion's out the next several weeks with a broken jaw.
I'm
So there you go.
surprised that Lomberg didn't get like I don't know if there was some sort of fine or more disciplinary action because he just
Because it
beat the
wasn't
brakes off him.
because essentially like Bastion threw some punches in at the end, so it was fine.
Yeah,
But I think the thing
I
that was
felt so
funny,
bad for him. I was like, "Oh my
yeah.
god."
And then to top it all off, Longberg got 2 penalties. I think he got 5 for fighting, and he got something else that I don't
Two for
remember.
roughing or something stupid like
Roughing.
that. Yeah,
Bastion gets 3 penalties and a broken jaw. And then a whole so he gets instigating. Somehow he got instigating. Don't see how that was instigating.
sure.
He got the 5 minute fighting and in a 10-minute misconduct, and he never returned to the game because he obviously broke his jaw. Um, which expect a bubble mask from Bastion when he comes back from
Sure.
injury, just like Dougie Hamilton did a couple of years ago. Um,
You gotta feel bad, like, when he comes back and people, like, who haven't seen him in a while will be like, "What the hell happened to you?" And he's gonna have to explain it.
well, I don't think there's much explaining. They see it on the replay. And there was a video, I forgot where I saw it. I saw it this morning. It was actually a video of somebody who was sitting right there
Oh,
when
we got,
Lindbergh was
like, a
throwing
good
punches at Bastion. And I was just like, oh, damn, no wonder. Like, Bastion looks like he died. It's
I
like,
wanna see that.
it's like the UFC, like when someone gets clocked really good in the face and then
Yeah.
they're stunned and they don't move. That was what that was. And like, it wasn't a fight. I wouldn't even want to say it was a good fight. It was a good beat down by Longberg.
Yeah, I
He did a
felt
good
really bad. I felt really bad for him, but, like, yeah, overall, it wasn't an impressive performance, but they needed that performance
Yeah,
against a good Devils team, and
yeah.
kinda fast forwarding now a little bit, you kind of hope the Devils do that to the Oilers tonight because of what Edmonton did last night to Calgary. So let's dive into it.
Eh,
Yeah, I gotta admit, man, turned on the TV and 20 seconds later, it's already 1-0 thanks to Leon Draisaitl. From what I remember, bad giveaway. Rasmus Anderson couldn't get it out of his own zone. Just leads to a 1-2 tic-tac-toe, and Draisaitl backhands it above Daniel Ladar's glove, and all of a sudden it's a 1-0 game. And it felt like at some point it was going to be a track meet too. Game goes on, 2-0.
mhm.
Later on in the first period, thanks to Jeff Skinner, who honestly, by the way, like on that goal, I give him full marks for staying with it.
Yeah,
He goes up the door. I think he was in alone a little bit, but he gets the rebound. He's on the ground and he like tucks it in right by the
yeah,
post. So I give him full marks. That was a great way to get it for him.
yeah,
Tough start for Calgary, but again, this is another one of those games where you got to fight back. And all of a sudden, they just kind of scrapped away. They go back to being that forechecking team. And thanks to Anthony Mantha, you make it 2-1. You get Sharon Govich now, who gets going. He gets his first of the year. Thanks to Kevin Ball, who's been great lately for this team. And then at the end, it's unfortunate because it was a really good third period. And unfortunately, it was
one
Martin
mistake.
Pospisil who Ryan Huska alluded to this after the game, that this is the second time in a row where Pospisil has taken a stupid penalty in the offensive zone,
Yeah.
which led to a goal. I think the last time that happened was when the Flames were at home to Pittsburgh. Penguins took advantage of it. They go up 3-2, and they could have won that game if it wasn't for Kadri, 40 seconds left. Here, that wasn't the case. They had some good chances late. Janmark gets an empty netter with 3 seconds left, so it was basically over at that point. But it was a very, very costly penalty. And I wanted to read it to you real quick, too, just from what
Sure.
Huska was saying after the game. He goes, that's twice now. Huska was just pissed after loss, busted for high sticking deep in the offensive zone. So we'll see. I think that might translate into tomorrow night's game when they're on the road. We'll see where they put Pospisil, because it's like you can't be taking those stupid penalties, and especially that late. And it's one thing for high staking, and I get it, like if it's not your fault and all that, and sometimes weird things happen with high sticks. It's either blatant or it's a mistake. But with Pospisil, I mean, this is now become a consistent pattern for him, where it's like, dude, you got to stop taking these penalties late in games when we're attacking. Nonetheless, those just
Yeah.
don't happen, or they shouldn't happen. So, yeah, Hyman gets credited with the goal. Oilers go up 3-2, and that'll end it as the Oilers end up winning it 4-2 the final. The Flames have lost 5 of their last 6 despite the win on Friday. And hey, I mean, we kind of talked about it, man, through this tough stretch of games. We said it all the way up till last night's game. There was about 5 or 6 games coming up where this is what we were going to see from the Flames, after that great start. And we are getting exactly, I think, what most people are now expecting from this team, now going one for, if you take the overtime loss here and there, they're now 1 for 5 or 1 for
Yeah.
6, excuse me, as I said before. Luckily, it's a bit of a easy road trip for them that we'll kind of get into. But your thoughts, anything you kind of take away from last night? I do have a segment on Kuzmenko a little bit, but any thoughts from last night's 4-2 loss to the Oilers?
I think the hope going into this game was you can pick up from a really big win on last Friday against the Devils, and you were honoring Michael Backlund, and there was a lot of energy in the building. Vladard had a really good game, and even in practice, like the next day, because I think Huska and the boys practiced like the day after on Saturday.
Yeah.
There was like a bit of an energy boost after that, and I think you
And,
win it.
yeah,
Yeah, go
and
ahead.
very quickly, like you say energy twice. That's exactly what Huska said last night in regards to the first period. The Oilers just had the energy, and we didn't, for whatever reason. And you alluded to it with them having it on Saturday.
Right, exactly. And the Oilers have kind of been up and down. They've never been, they haven't been like super bad nor like super dominant. And obviously, being without Connor McDavid is unfortunate. But then again, you do remember that Leon Draisaitl is still playing. So, I mean, is it really the end of the world? Not necessarily. So, fortunately enough for them, unfortunate for us. And yeah, you would have thought that the Flames would have come out with that energy. You dominated. If you go back to that October 13th game, you dominated the Oilers. And that was when they had both McDavid and Draisaitl on the line. There was like, they dominated in Edmonton tonight. Last night, it wasn't there. It took them a period and change to get going.
Yeah,
And you can't do that against good teams. If you're trying to
correct.
be a competitive team moving forward, you can't get off to these slow starts. And we saw it against Utah last week. You didn't see it as much against the Devils. I thought that game was boring. So, like, did either team really jump out energy wise? No. But this was another case of the boys should have been ready and they weren't. And they just allowed the Oilers for a period and change to kind of dominate. And, that's frustrating. You can't get off to these slow starts, especially against a team like the Oilers. You look at the stats on the far right side, they're pretty even. I think overall, you look at it and you could say to yourself,
Yeah,
going into that third period, it really was anybody's game. You grab the momentum back with Mantha getting a goal, Sharon Govich finding the back of the net, finally getting his first. I think you're starting to see Sharon Govich get back to where we saw him last year, where now that it's been a couple of games, he's finding his footing, he's finding his goal scoring. And granted, was it kind of a weird goal that he scored? Sure, but at the same time, you need that. If you're
yeah,
getting off to a slow start, you need that. And there was, 5 minutes into the third, I really sat there and thought, I think this game's going to end up going to overtime. Because it just kind of felt like the both
felt
teams
like it.
settled it and
Agreed.
everything. And then Pospisil taking that penalty is just brutal. I mean, it's just brutal. When you haven't been the best on the penalty kill, giving up a penalty that late to a team like that is going to kill you. It's going to kill you three-quarters of the time, and that's what it was. And you could see the life in the building just kind of drop
Yeah.
when they scored that power play goal, because even though it was 3-2, you kind of felt like that this is going to be tough. This is going to be tough. And again, obviously not getting it done, frustrating. You lose 5 of your last 6. The energy just quite frankly hasn't been there, other than the one game. And you think about
Yeah.
this: the game on Friday could have gone the opposite way. Like, you could have given up a weird bounce and lost 3-0 to the Devils, and you would have been staring at a 6-game losing streak. 5 of
Right.
6 is not that much better. It's just not.
No.
There is no energy right now, and it's irritating me that there have been some winnable games in this stretch that they haven't gotten at least a point. This should have been a game where you at least get a point, and you don't. And it's
Even if
aggravating.
Yeah, even if they were a 500 team through this stretch, right? They were like 2-2-1 or 3-3 or something like that. You
Yeah,
can walk away. Yeah, I'm good with that. I don't have a problem with that, right?
anybody would take
So
that.
you're right. Like last night did feel like a missed opportunity. Um, I think just through these last, like the stretch that we talked about here, this tough stretch, last night felt like a missed opportunity. Utah felt like a missed opportunity. You can look back at a couple of games, and just say like, hey, like it's when they were in Seattle, like they got the overtime point, could have got the extra point. So the nice thing about this is like that tough stretch of games is in the past, right? I think it's a full reset going into this week. Everything that they have done up to this point, like, hey, this team is still 6-5-1, right? Like exactly like who the Oilers are. They're still in the mix of things, right? Like, again, I don't think people expected this team to be above 500 come beginning of November, right? Which is where we're at. So,
Right.
shocking, but is what it is. It happened, and I wanted to bring this up last night from last night, excuse me, too, because I thought this was interesting. This is on the Calgary Herald, so this was the on one of the news articles. What's either impressive or perhaps infuriating for coaches is that Anthony Mantha has scored 4 on a grand total of only 14 shots in October, and nearly a third of those came in the latest outing. So the good news is that he's firing at about a 28.6% clip. The bad news is that he's nowhere close to the pace that he was aiming for when he talked about putting 300 pucks on the net during this upcoming campaign, this upcoming season with the Flames in preseason interviews. So that to me, I thought was shocking, right? Like the guy promising to put up, just throw pucks on net, right? Like that, like I don't know if it's him not finding good opportunities or not finding space, but if you're Mantha, like you're in a contract year. You're in a year where you could be dealt to a really good team come deadline day. If he continues at this pace, I don't know if the Flames are going to be willing to do that because I don't know if they're going to get the value out of him come deadline. So I
No.
think that's like it is a bit of a good and a bad thing because it's like, wow, he's got 4 goals on his last 14 shots. So it's like,
Yeah.
put the puck on net more, man. Like, what are you like? That to me is such a telltale sign that that's the guy that needs to step up and play more top 6 minutes. Because if you're seeing that on the latest outing and he's putting it up at a 28.6% rate, like, hello, you need
Yeah.
to
Right.
fire it more, right? Like,
Yeah.
okay, we talked about before quality and quantity. For Mantha, it's just firing it on net. Like, we need to see that more. I need to see him now after reading that, maybe be on the top line. And I'm okay with Huberto being up there, right? Like
Yeah.
you gotta like, there's got to be some level of production because even watching last night's game, it just felt like you're right. Like you said about a period and a half in, it took forever to get their gears going,
For
right? And
sure.
it just didn't look like they were controlling the pace. It looked like they were just getting outworked that entire first period. They came out of the gate super slow, and not a lot of quality chances. And I thought Jeff Skinner didn't have to make a lot of difficult saves last night, despite the 2 goals that went in. So I don't know, like what are your kind of thoughts there with Mantha after kind of giving you that stat?
I mean, the thing about Anthony Mantha over the last couple of years is that he's always been known to be a guy that definitely, favors shooting the puck at a pretty high rate. I mean, that's where the value has been for him. You look at what he's done, you look at what he did in Washington, it was that kind of thing, even in Detroit as well. You're absolutely right. If this is the level that we're going to get from Mantha, he's not going to be worth more than a fifth or sixth round pick. And I'm being very honest about
It's true.
that. And
Yep.
you're going to look at teams who know what Mantha can do when he's going, that are going to look at him and say, wow, that's going to be really cheap value for a guy at the deadline if we need a little bit of scoring push. Um, my very simple reason as to why I think Mantha has, not put as many shots up as we would like is simply that he's overthinking it. I think that
Right.
there's too many times where he's looking for the perfect shot. And if you look at some of the goals that he has scored, quite frankly, they are goals that, yeah, I would expect him to find the back of the net. I look at that breakaway goal that he scored against Utah last week as an example of, yeah, he probably should score there. That's a pretty high danger opportunity. I
The
think that,
highest danger opportunity.
yes, yes, for sure. I think for Mantha, it's simply got to be you got to throw the puck on net no matter where you are. There's guys in this league that we have seen where it doesn't really matter where they are on the ice. They're still going to put the puck on net because he's talking about it from just a shots perspective. He's not
And,
talking about it from, yeah, go ahead.
yeah, and they're creating, like, those kind of chances too. You get guys who are high goal scorers, they're creating their own chances, and that's something that I
Right.
find Mantha's just having trouble doing. Like, he's not I find, like, he's not holding on to the puck more where it's like, dude, like, by simply you, after reading the stat of him going 4 for 14 in his last 14 shots on net, like,
Hmm.
you just simply have to start creating those chances, and they're gonna find the back of the net eventually.
Yeah. The guy that I like to use to compare Mantha to is Tyler Toffoli with the Sharks, also another former Flame. Just throwing that out there.
Yeah,
Um, Tyler Toffoli has never been a fleet of foot. I think we could say that, right? He's
right.
never been like a fast skater or a huge playmaker. But what's the one thing that he does well more than anything else? It's putting the puck in the back of the net. You know why? Because he just fires it on net no matter where he is, even if it's not the greatest of shot. And you
Yeah.
look at him. He's doing so well in his first year so far, his first year in San Jose. The year he was in New Jersey last year, ended up leading the team in goals. Why? Because simply put, he was creating his own opportunities and he was finding the back of the net because he was just constantly throwing it there no matter where he was on the ice. Mantha is not doing that. Mantha is similar. He's not fleet of foot, in my opinion, and
Correct.
he has the opportunity. He has a very good wrist shot. There is no reason that he should not be getting 7 to 10 shots a game, in my opinion, if we're going to go based off of what he's saying. If he's trying to get to 300 shots, we are now into November. We are now almost a month into the season, and the dude doesn't even have 20 shots on goal. There is
Well
no
well, sorry well, sorry, he had 4 goals in his last 14 shots,
four
so
goals
he
in his last
probably
14.
has, like, 50, give or
He
take.
probably has 50, right? That's still not to where I feel that he should be if we're
Actually, that's
talking.
that's stretching it a little bit, actually. I don't even know how many he has, but I think that's
All right.
stretching it.
Whatever the case may be, he's scored 4 goals in his last 14 shots.
Yeah,
14 shots is not doing it for me. It's not doing it when you've been struggling to score offensively in general. You have scored a total of 5 goals the last 2 games, which one of them was an empty netter. So how much are we really going to count that? It depends on who you ask.
yeah,
4 goals, right? Or, and you got blown out in the 2 games prior to the game on Friday against New Jersey and you haven't been scoring.
right.
So, like, hello, like, he needs to get going
I think
for this, for his own sake and for the team's sake.
the funniest part about it is, like, the last 3 games, we're raking on him because he has been the leading goal scorer for the team in these last 3 or 4 games. That's the
Right.
crazy part about all this, right? Like, and I think it's just more emphasis on him to be like, dude, like, you have the capabilities to do this. Start making your own chances and just throw them on net. I don't care if they're like you mentioned it. I don't care if they're not grade A chances. Just start throwing them on net. You brought up Tyler Toffoli. I thought that's a perfect transition. That's a perfect example. He's not the fastest guy in the league. He's not the quickest on his feet. He's not the guy who's going to dangle everybody left, right, and center.
He has no dangle moves whatsoever. I'm sorry.
Right.
Holy
But the
can't dangle
guy,
worth a damn.
but the guy has a good shot. Mantha has a good shot too, right? And he's finding just different ways on every angle possible, right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
that's why it's working for Toffoli, and that's why it has been for his entire career. That's why he can go anywhere, and you can fit him in everywhere because he plays the style that he's comfortable with, and he is him, right?
Yep.
He just goes in, and he's just being himself in terms of just firing it wherever, right? He doesn't overthink it.
Right.
He thinks
Yep.
of, and you saw it to the two with the Devils last year, right? He's just finding himself to be, he puts himself in the best situation. And even for that millisecond where he knows I'm going to have a shot on net here, he goes for it. He doesn't
Yeah,
overthink it, right? He doesn't think about the playmaking or whatever. He just knows that it's got to go
yeah,
on net. And that's something I think Flames fans are just kind of eager to see more out of Mantha. It's like, you can
exactly.
be that guy. You can be that type of guy, like that Tyler Toffoli guy, where you can just start throwing them on net and see what happens. You never know.
Exactly.
Weird bounces happen everywhere. We just talked about it. Weird bounces happened yesterday, and they happened on Friday against Jacob Markstrom, who's one of the best goalies in the league. Up for debate up to this point
Up
in the
for
season.
debate.
Sure, but you know what I mean.
This season definitely up for debate.
Exactly. So, yeah, I think that's enough on Mantha, but you're right. Like, you want to just see more out of it. And I think Huska's alluded to it. And I hope that's the case going into this week's little road trip. Last thing about last night, I thought it was ironic that the best player was the player that was demoted to the fourth line. And it was Andrei Kuzmenko. So I thought Kuzmenko, like, he even said it after the game. He's like, you know what's funny is I watched him a bit in the third period, and he did like have that bit of a pep to his step a little bit.
Hmm.
He was very fast paced, like he was trying to be creative a little bit, and I kind of liked it. You
I
know,
think he was motivated.
he was,
Being
and I
demoted
thought
to
he
the fourth
played.
line, you're going to go one of two ways. You're either going to sulk about it, especially being a guy who plays normally in the top six. You're going to sulk about it, or you're going to
Sure,
try to make the best of the situation. And I think that's what Kuzmenko did. I think he chose the latter. I think he chose it as, okay, it sucks, but I'm going to go make it. I'm going to go make an impact regardless. And he did. He was one of the only guys that I think had energy, at least in that third period. Like
he
he
had
had a
a
little, like you said,
boatload
pep.
of energy. Like
Yeah.
he was just so like calm, cool, collective, creative with it. And I think the funny thing is like with the four lines that Huska rolls with every night, like it's a four-line system. I don't think he's trying to look at it as people being like, hey, like you're being demoted. Like, no, this is just the system that they're rolling with here. And with Kuzmenko paired with Lomberg last night, I actually liked it. I thought it was working fairly well. I thought they were forechecking and battling on the boards for a bit in that third period
I
in
agree.
the offensive zone, winning
Yes.
puck battles, setting it up. Like I thought he played very well last night. So, it's something that Huska might say, hey, like, how do you feel? Like, are you comfortable playing with Lomberg? Like, I don't want you to look at it as a demotion. I'm just trying to get the most out of you, right?
Right.
And whether it be with Lomberg, whether it be up on the top line with Kadri, like you have to start finding it for him. And I kind of like seeing it going forward. I kind of want to see it again with him and Lomberg going forward. I didn't mind it last night.
And I don't and I think that's the way that Huska should look at it as well, is saying to Kuzmenko that I don't I don't want you to look at this as a demotion. I don't want you to look at it any negative way. I want to create the most chemistry from all of my guys. And if you're developing that good amount of chemistry with Longberg and you feel the most comfortable with Longberg, then we're going to play with Longberg, and that's good, and that's that, and we're going to still give you the opportunity to get minutes and to play. We just want to find the most success, and right now with the team losing 5 of its last 6, if you're Ryan Huska, everything in my opinion is on the table,
Totally.
because you're trying to turn the tide, and you have to find a way to turn the tide if you want to get back in this thing here and get good and get the good vibes rolling again. Take some chances like this because you don't know what could work.
Totally. And I think like with the way the season's going, like I think guys understand that it's like I don't think this is a traditional team that's 1 through 4. This is a line, 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 line. You know what I mean? Like these are just 4 lines that we're rolling out. They might like, and it just determines like, and I think Huska just finds out like throughout the first period who's got it, who doesn't, right? And he goes, perfect. If it happens to be that fourth line, we're going to see a little bit more of that, right? If it's not, fine. If we find it that it's this line working, great. We're going to roll with that a bit more too. So, yeah, like it's just one of those special cases with a team where you're finding that all their lines are your first, second, third, and fourth lines at this point, right? Because
Right.
you said it, anything's got to work at this point. You got to turn the tide to a little bit. And I think like this is kind of like this feels like that perfect point after that month where it's like, okay, now let's hit the reset button. Let's forget about everything that's happened. We don't care about being 5 of 6, whatever, these last 6 games. Let's just move on. We got a road trip coming up. Let's focus on that. Let's move forward, right? It's kind of like that 5-game system that they did back in the day with Hartley, and how This team's
Yeah.
a little bit reminding me of that team back in 2014 where
Mm.
it's just 5 games at a time, right? We're just
Yep.
focusing on those 5 games. Let's move on, right? And that's just how it's going to work, right? We're not going to remember this 10 years from now, so why should we remember it now,
Right.
right? You might as
Yep.
well move on.
And this
So,
road trip's a good opportunity for them to
yep,
right the ship.
it's a good opportunity. We'll get into it, and I figure we'll take a break and roll through some ads. The quest for the Stanley Cup starts now. The puck's dropping on the 2024-25 season. You can get in on all the action at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NHL. It's super easy for first-timers to get started. You can try betting on something simple, like picking a team to win. Go to the DraftKings Sportsbook app, select your team, and place your first bet. And if you're new to DraftKings, listen up. New customers can bet $5 to get $200 in bonus bets instantly. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use code THPN. That's code THPN for new customers to get $200 in bonus bets when you bet just $5. It's only on DraftKings, and the crown is yours. If you do have a gambling problem, you can call 1-800-GAMBLER in New York. You can call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY as well. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. You can call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. And on behalf of the Boot Hill Casino and Report, 21 plus age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. This is voided in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 186 hours after issuance. For additional terms of responsible gambling resources, see dkng.com/ice and a copyright of the NHL 2024. All rights are reserved. We're also sponsored by Game Time. Neil's already been to more games than I have in the last couple of years, and I'm looking forward to going back again in February coming up. I'm sad that I can't go this weekend because that was the plan, but it is what it is. I can still look ahead. I can still get some great views on panoramic views of seats, of what looks good, what doesn't, what prices look good, what prices don't. And it's very simple to move around, and it's very easy to use in that regard. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. We also have all-in pricing, which is toggling. You can toggle the feature to show the total up front with no surprise fees at checkout. Again, you get a panoramic view of your seats in the app before you buy. You get the lowest price guarantee, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. And Game Time ticket coverage allows you to have the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code THPN for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code THPN for $20 off. Download Game Time today. And what time is it?
It's game
Game
time.
time. Yeah. I always wait for you to do it at the end.
There you go.
Nice. Yeah. So I think we've now hit the reset button on what's happened recently too. Whatever. I think, at this point in the year, they're 6-5-1. Not bad. I mean, all things considered, what our expectations were for this team could be a lot worse. They could be at the bottom of the barrel, but they're kind of where it's okay to be in right now. And I'll say one thing before we talk about this little road trip, because I see it all the time with updated draft picks, right?
Mhm.
So, with the Kachuk trade now coming in and our pick going to Montreal, right? Basically with the top 10 protection, uh, the Flames will get their pick, and if it's not, Montreal gets the pick, or the better of this one or Florida. And then with
Right.
the Devils one, I think your guys is top 10 protected too, if I'm not
Top 10.
mistaken.
Yep.
Top 10 protected, right? So, I'm thinking that the Devils and Panthers won't be in the top 10. And if the Flames are, then it is what it is, right? But it's kind of funny. Like, I was thinking about this over the weekend where, I was just reading it and people were commenting on it, right? And I'm like, I would rather, like, if you're going to give Montreal the pick, because it's either going to be this year or you automatically give it next year if you're outside the top 10,
Yep.
I'd rather give it up this year, right? Get outside the top 10, be in that mushy middle, because you're going to have 2 first-round picks regardless. Like, you're going to get it from New Jersey and Florida. Like, if you
Right.
want to be in that mushy middle this year, it's actually not that bad. It's actually an improvement because everybody thought you were going to suck this year. So it's not a terrible thing because you're gonna get rid of that pick. It's out of the way, and still understand that you're gonna get 2 picks regardless. Because if you end up falling inside the top 10, well then okay, you keep your pick, right? You have Florida's pick, and you have the Devils' pick if they finish outside the top 10. So you get 3 of them, but it kind of screws yourself for next year because you don't have your own pick. And we don't know what this team's going to
Right.
look like next year. So thought I'd just say that. And I don't want people focusing on too much because it's November, for God's sakes. Haven't even talked about the prospect ranking yet. So let's leave it at that. But I just wanted to mention that. So, yeah, big road trip coming up. Little teeny road trip, though. The Flames are heading out east for the first time this season. They'll be heading to Montreal Tuesday night to battle the Canadiens. They'll be heading to Boston Thursday night to battle the Bruins. That'll be a good one. And then Saturday afternoon at 1 o'clock, they will be in Buffalo to take on the Sabres. This feels like such a perfect opportunity for this team to right the ship
Yeah.
because the Habs have been struggling. The Bruins have been struggling, which has shocked a lot of people. And the Sabres have been the Sabres. Right?
There you go.
So this feels like, okay, if you could find a way to get 2 wins out of this
2.
road trip, that should be the goal, right?
Yeah.
Like, or like, that's what I mean. Like, you have to find a way to at least to get 2, right? Or just get 1 for God's sakes, So it does feel like a good opportunity because they have been playing good teams. They know what the standard is, and now they get to go into all these buildings being like, okay, like, we know what we should be doing here and we can execute it, right? So
Yeah.
I have high hopes for this team Tuesday night in Montreal. I think that's a winnable game. And I think you want to start off in this road trip with that way. So we'll kind of get an idea of what lineups look like tomorrow night. But any kind of thoughts or predictions that you have for this little road trip coming up, and then especially tomorrow night in Montreal where they start?
I would expect them to take 2 out of 3 in this road trip. I think the Boston one's going to be the toughest of the 3 because, it's Boston. And at any moment, they
Always
could
tough.
just turn it around and get going, right?
Yeah.
Which would be ironically funny if, like, they went 1-3 and the only win that they get was the game in Boston. Which I don't know if that would impress me or irritate me more. I don't probably
Probably
irritate me more.
irritating. Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely
exactly.
irritating.
Montreal one, I think is the most winnable of the 3. I would personally argue, although Buffalo has been kind of, up and down of late. But I think that if the Flames can get off and win the game in Montreal, I think that will give them a little bit of extra confidence going into the Boston game. We'll see where the Bruins are by the time the Flames are in Boston later this week. And then you have that Saturday 1 o'clock game. I always say this about midday games or like early time games. One of 2 things is going to happen. It's either going to be a snooze fest because sometimes it is, or it becomes a game where one of the teams just kind of comes out and takes advantage right away.
Right.
And I think that that's going to be kind of the thing I want to keep my eye on in the game against Buffalo is how does that end up going? But if you can find a way somehow to be 2-0 going into that third game against Buffalo, I mean, you're in, as I would call it, you're in Fat City. I mean, you're in a position where you could take all 3, or you could, take 2 out of 3. If the way that I look at it, Kyle, especially with these road trips, is that if you can find a way to get points in all 3 of these games in one capacity or another, I still consider it somewhat of a success. That's the way I look at it. And, you see the schedule right here. Starting with that Buffalo game, you have 3 games in 4 nights, with 2 of them being travel day. With 2 of them being travel, you got to go to Buffalo, and then you got Vancouver next Tuesday. But overall, I think when you look at this is a very winnable road trip. This is a road trip that you can really kind of get right into it because I'll be very honest with you. Look at the schedule in November. You don't get some success now, the back end of this month is going to be tough. It's
Yeah.
going to be
I haven't
really
even
tough.
shown you the bottom half of
I
this.
don't want
Of
to.
this.
I'm seeing it. Okay, well,
So it's
see,
so
the last week there is very winnable.
you just beat Pittsburgh on a
You just
miraculous
beat
comeback.
Pittsburgh. Detroit is kind of mid.
Suspect.
Ottawa's mid, and Columbus is Columbus.
Right.
So
But just kind of looking at this, right? This is a very favorable month, I think, for the Flames. Just by looking at this, right? You got 3 games here. I think you can go 2-1. I don't think there's an excuse. I think the biggest game of the year the biggest game this month is Monday night against the LA Kings. These divisional games, and you know it too, are huge. They're
all right,
massive. right? So you have back-to-back divisional games next week, which are probably the two of the biggest ones because you have to go back to Vancouver. They're probably pissed about what happened in the season opener, so that's
Oh
never going
yeah,
to be easy. But the nice thing is that with these 3 weeks you're looking ahead here, you do go on a bit of a road trip this week, and it's kind of spread out okay. Like, you're not doing a lot of travel either. Like, it's a quick little 3 little road game trip here. But then all
sure.
of a sudden, you come home. It sucks on a back to back, right? But I'm glad we're getting the Kings first, right? Because I want that level of importance to be there. You got the Kings first. You got to go to Vancouver the following day, which again is not far for them. Like, it's probably an hour, which is nothing. So you go to Vancouver, and then what's nice is you do have 4 games at home, four
Right.
straight at home, which is great. You get to
Hmm.
relax, you're not going anywhere. I think there's no excuses, right? You can give yourself a bit of rest, especially after the Vancouver game for this stretch coming up. Nashville, you got 3 days rest before the New York teams come in, right? Rangers Wild back to back is going to be a bit brutal. And then to finish off the month, you have, I think, another favorable road trip, right? Again, back to backs are never easy. Blue Jackets, Pittsburgh, right? But all 4 teams are pretty suspect there. So I think just looking at this month of November, it's pretty favorable for this team. I actually don't hate it. I think it's a pretty good schedule for them. I don't think it's daunting a little bit, I think, in 2 areas where you have the back to back here, and then you got the Rangers and Wild. Like, on,
Yeah. Yeah.
not back to back, but
The-
next game after another.
2 out of 3. Yeah, the next 2 games. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't mind this schedule. I think it's actually okay. I don't mind the
It's a
month of
winnable
November.
schedule.
It should be.
This could be, if we're thinking positive, things go the way that we hope, this could be a very successful month that you go into December having a better idea as to where your team is and how you can orchestrate moving forward.
And
That's the way I
so,
look at it.
because you got, just doing quick math here, just looking at the schedule, you got 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. You have 13 games here. I think if you can find a way to win 7 of those, I don't think I'm asking for much, right? If we're talking about them having a a somewhat successful season, I
Yeah,
think if you can find to win 7 games here, I'll take it.
yeah,
Right? You're still hanging around. There's a lot of teams still trying to figure it out within the league, but I think this is very, like, if you flip, let's say, this road trip and it's at home, right? And you have like Nashville, the Islanders, the Rangers, and the Wild, and you're on the road, which they will be eventually. That's a tough road
that's a
trip
lot
right there,
tougher.
right?
Yeah,
Like, that's brutal, right? So
that's a gauntlet of travel right
that is
there.
a that is an absolute gauntlet, right?
Maybe not
So
the Islanders.
we'll see what happens. Like, we'll look back every month and we'll just kind of see what happens going forward in terms of the schedule. But yeah, like, this to me, after the last 2 weeks of it being a pretty tough schedule, right?
Mhm.
Minus 1 game, I would say Utah, right? Um, yeah, the last little bit of it being a tough schedule. I think the thing is with this team, and they were saying it last night after the game, they just got to avoid these losing streaks, right?
Yeah,
Like, 2 should be the max, you know? Like, if you're gonna have it, like, 2 should be the max, right? You
yeah.
can't be going on these 3 game, 4 game, 5 game, losing 5 of 6 losing streaks. Like, you gotta find a way to just right the ship somehow. And so
You
I
do.
think this schedule here gives them that opportunity to do so.
I agree. And I think it's just a matter of, you got to start with this road trip. Your first task needs to be getting out of this stretch you've been in. So if that means you take 2 out of 3, then you take 2 out of 3, right? Because obviously asking for a 3 game sweep is a bridge too far, I think.
Right.
But then, like you said, you get into that. If you could go into this next 2 weeks after, between the 10th and the 23rd, where you took 2 out of 3 on the road trip, and now you're playing a bunch of games at home against some really, really good opponents. I think you go into it with a lot more confidence. But the
Right.
first thing, as I said earlier in this episode, is energy needs to be there.
Mhm.
And they need to have a belief that they can do it. You look at the first 5, 6, 7 games of the year, this team believed every night that they could win this game, that they could win. Now they don't feel that way. They need to get back to that if they want to have any success. It starts with the mental, and eventually that becomes the physical aspect of it. So
Yeah.
that's what I want to see here, and it starts with the game tomorrow night against Montreal.
And I think it's like it definitely is a reset, right, for this team, and they're just preparing for this month ahead now, right? I think
Yeah,
they're just getting ready for it. Whatever, it's in the past, and I think this like it is what it is, right? People
the
were
past is
expecting
the
this from
past,
the Flames these
basically.
last 6 games, like it is
Yep,
what it is, right? It happened, right?
it
You're
is what
still
it is.
above 500 after all that's said and done.
Exactly.
So yeah, like I imagine they'll go like I imagine coming up, Huska's gonna have this team ready, right? That's the main thing is that especially these last couple of games, maybe minus New Jersey, the energy's just not been there. Whatever it's
Mhm.
been, like the energy and the work ethic just hasn't been there. And I think we can find I think this is just again, tomorrow night's a really perfect opportunity to do that. This road trip's a good chance to do it. And it's just fun to just and I think the other thing too is just get away for a little bit.
Yeah, just kidding.
Some sometimes that's the best medicine. You play 2 at home, yeah, you go 1-1, whatever. Okay, let's go away for a bit now.
Right. Exactly. And you have
Yeah,
a time, and it's an opportunity for guys to obviously build, chemistry and get to know each other a little bit more. And I think that that's important always in a long season like this.
for sure.
Um, I think it's important. So that's,
Yeah.
hopefully them going away for a bit, going away this week, and just, having no distractions other than being in the city and playing those games. I think could do well for this Flames team.
So I think they can win 7 of these 13 games in November. Do you have a prediction?
I think they can win 8. I
You
can
think
see
so,
them
eh?
I could see them having an upset win at some point. I think that game against the Rangers could be a surprise to a lot of us.
Okay,
Because I'll
interesting.
say this, the Rangers are doing what they normally do. They don't score a lot, and they're waiting for Shesterkin to bail them out. In a grind game like you saw against New Jersey last Friday, if it becomes that against the Rangers, I think the Flames have a little bit more of the advantage in that regard, just based off of the
I'm
style.
worried that if Shesterkin plays, that's gonna be a long night. That's my
Yeah.
only thing
If it's
because they
Jonathan
can't
Quick,
score.
then I kind of look at it like all bets are off kind of thing. So we'll
Yeah,
see.
you can see
But
that. It's
I
that's
the
it's
Flames
a tough
are
one.
like there's a game in here that we don't expect them to win that I think they might, and I think it's the Rangers one, but it could be a different game.
I still think the biggest one here is LA. That's a
Fair enough.
big, big one, right? Vancouver, whatever. We got them at the beginning of the season, right? I think just divisional wise, though,
Right.
like you're only getting 2 games here in November against divisional opponents. Got to take advantage of it, right? Even
Right.
Nashville, too, like who's not in the division, who's in that fight to get back into it after starting 0
Mhm.
5.
Yeah,
You got to expect that that's going to be a
for
good
sure.
fight. So that's good. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it for today. I kind of want to end this on one story. And I hope that I can echo this to whoever's is listening. That kind of happened on the weekend. And I didn't want to share it yet because it happened so shortly yesterday. So just in terms of just driving, I'm with a friend and just in terms of kilometers, because you don't know kilometers, right? Uh 58 kilometers over the speed limit's not safe. So
Damn.
if you are that person, just,
Don't be that person.
don't be that person. I think about like you have like the other person's life in your hands whenever you're behind the wheel, right? And just be safe with it. I don't want to dive too deep into it, but it's just it just kind of waking up today is just kind of like, man, like something bad could have really happened yesterday and had to make them aware of it, took the initiative to be like, I don't trust you driving, anymore going forward. Like, you got to fix this. And I hope people can kind of feel the same way about that. So just a little PSA about it. And hopefully everybody can just be safe on the roads. That's all I wanted to say.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
yeah, that'll be it for today. We'll recap on Thursday what happened Tuesday night with Montreal. We'll get the game going on Thursday night. We'll get you guys ready for it. We'll have a guest on Thursday as well. And I think we'll also have a guest next Monday, too. So
Monday.
for Flames fans, you might be familiar with the next 2 guests coming up on the episodes. But for now, just myself and Neil wrapping it up today. Thanks again, as always, Neil. Check him out as well in your own podcast, Double State of Mind, who's very grateful enough for doing this for me. And I believe I'll be live Thursday night for the game.
Perfect.
I can confirm that on Thursday, but we'll
He
see.
can confirm that on Thursday,
I was supposed
and
to do it last week against Utah,
right.
and I was like, thank God I didn't do
Yeah.
it.
And obviously, guys, make sure, if you want updates as well for when we go live, just in general, you could also check, follow us on Flamescast on social media, both Instagram and Twitter, but also the Hockey Podcast Network at HockeyPodNet on Twitter and Instagram as well whenever we go live. So you guys get notified.
Beautiful. That'll do it. Number 13 in the books. And we will be back to you guys on Thursday with more stuff.
Great way to end it there. Great
Not
way to
bad.
end it.
Hope everybody has a great rest of the day and a good rest of the week. We'll talk to you all on Thursday.